Thank you, Akshay, for that nice introduction. And we're hoping that everybody from Bombay, there's so many of us, all participate in the upcoming oculoplasty OPI conference. So, uh, uh, so basically, we're going to be talking about ptosis evaluation, back to basics. But when Akshay asked me to speak, he said that it comes with something like, sorry, yeah, the red flags. So I found it really interesting because this is a topic that you present right from your early days of post fellowship to now, and I actually thought that this was such a specific way to actually present it and point out the things that really matter. So what is a red flag? A red flag is basically defined as either a danger signal or a warning, but it can also mean that it alerts you to something and not necessarily can be a danger or warning leading to something bad, but it can be a prior alert. And often we flag our males just to let us know that this is not dangerous, but it's important. So evaluation of ptosis has all these, lists of the routine, what we go through. And this is the laundry list of how we evaluate it. We have a chart, we mark out all these, stick out all this. This is how we teach our residents. And while we'll be going through each of these, what we'll be really looking for is that what are the red flags that we really need to point out in these. So let's come to something very basic. Is there ptosis really? So let's look at these two patients. The patient on top complained of a left eye ptosis, while the patient, the lady below, complained of a right eye ptosis. And they're absolutely right in what they're saying, that one eye looks smaller. So the simplest thing that we always tell or talk about is that look at both the eyes together and see that there's nothing else happening in the other eye. So obviously in this patient, she has a contralateral eyelid retraction. Many other causes which cause there's bulging of the eyeballs in cases like ophthalmos, in myopia, which will make the eye appear bigger and give rise to a pseudotosis. While in this case, the patient may appear that she has a ptosis, but in fact, it is a ipsilateral enophthalmos. That means the same eye is looking ptotic because of the enophthalmos. Similarly, this gentleman here complained of a drooping gradually over time. But if you look closely, yes, he does. I mean, when you compare it and you do an MRD, but when you just lift the brow, you see that there is basically a brow ptosis with a severe dermatochalasis, which is giving rise to a pseudotosis. So basically, these are all pseudotosis. And while they're not red flags, you don't want to rush into surgery and have something else land up happening. The other thing that which I've not put a photo is that also to look as the face in toto, because often you will find, and I'll come to a photo later, where a patients actually have a facial asymmetry, which is already known. Now, if you look at this girl, she said that she had a ptosis in the right eye, and she actually does have a ptosis of about 1 millimeter and almost touching 1.5 millimeters. But she also has certain other things. So she's not a pseudotosis, she has a ptosis. But when you point it out to her, she has a lateral droop, she has a mild brow ptosis. And if you see the upper tarsal show, which is a really important marker, which we often talk about in not related to ptosis, but in thyroid eye disease, I think it's a good marker to see. You will see that her upper tarsal show in the ptotic eye has been always lesser right since her childhood photos. So history plays a big role, and it's not, while it's not a red flag, it's something you can go back and review. When you look at this girl, she complains of a right eye ptosis. She does have a right eye ptosis, but on history, which she gave later because she was keen on having a repeat surgery, she had already had a prior 2 surgeries to correct it. So someone like this is definitely a red flag. 2 prior surgeries with a relatively good correction, and she did have some amount of facial asymmetry, is definitely someone I would be wary about treating for a 3rd surgery to give something beyond this. So of course you have the palpable fissure height, up gaze, primary gaze, down gaze. This is something that's taught standard to us, and marginal reflex distance. But there is a purpose to each of these gazes. So let's come to those. So of course, one is you look at all the gazes, you make an MRD, and you basically classify mild. moderate, and severe ptosis. But what if we just break it up? So what does it really signify? Primary gaze is severity of ptosis, and up and down gaze gives us an indication of a levator action, and the down gaze gives us indication of a lid lag. So here's a small video to just show how you test for LPS action. So this is a severe ptosis. You see that you put a thumb on the frontalis so as to eradicate the frontalis action and ask the person to look from down to up. Now, while you're looking this, in this simple action, you can find many things. So what is a lid lag? So lid lag is nothing but a delay in the eyelid movement while looking down. But when you measure it as a static sign. And you can see that there is a difference in the same child and there is a significant lid lag. What does this indicate? This indicates usually a dystrophic levator muscle and is often seen in congenital ptosis, not in aponeurotic ptosis. And the degree of the levator lid lag determines what? It determines often the kind of surgery we do and the kind of counseling we give to the patient, because this is something that will not go away. And it is a question that is asked recurrently by the patients. Will this go away? And it does not. It is important to notice the lid lag. And in this is the patient post-surgery of mine with this moderate onset ptosis, and you can see that the lid lag has worsened. So lid lag is definitely a very important red flag, which should be noted. Similarly, coming to lag of thalamus, this patient had a moderate to severe ptosis. This is the inability for the eyes to close. So why does it matter? So as you can see, she had a very, very minimal lid lag. But this is important as in cases of congenital ptosis and when you're doing a levator resection, just like the lid lag, the lag of thalamus will worsen significantly post-surgery, will reduce over time, but may still remain. This is important as if there is a very severe lag of thalamus or moderate to severe, you want to be sure that you give good topical lubricants and also counsel the patient that there will be a worsening. Coming to margin crease distance, we measure it while we are looking from down to up when the lid crease starts forming. And the importance is it gives us an indication whether it's congenital or acquired as an aponeurotic ptosis. It gives us an indication of the levator action, and of course, it's a surgical line. Now, I couldn't find a good photograph, but the real red flag is, in this cases, is when you have multiple lid creases, which is your surgical line or line of fire that you would choose. So probably it's always measured to the opposite eyelid, but you want to, so even in this girl, there are few multiple lid creases. You will obviously take the measurement to the right side and match it here. But in case it's a millimeter here, often either above or lower, you will take one which is closest to the normal eyelid. Extraocular movements is something that we all check, and you know that there is congenital ptosis, which is associated with superior rectus elevation paresis, and also there is complicated congenital ptosis. But as you can see in this patient, and this was a photograph I borrowed from my fellowship days because I didn't have one of my own, is that you can also have a double elevator palsy. And this is really important to note down. So extraocular muscles and the movements and its association with any restriction or a syndrome is extremely important. Even in cases of ptosis with hypotropia is very important, as when the hypotropic eye is made to look in primary gaze, often the ptosis goes away. For whom the Bell's toll. So Bell's phenomena, as we know, is when you ask the patient to close the eye and there is an upward and outward protective movement of the eyeball. But why is this actually a red flag? That is because when you correct a ptosis, you want to have a good Bell's phenomena, especially in congenital cases. Because if the Bell's is not good, you can lead to severe corneal exposure. But let's think of some other case scenarios that you may see. There is something called as a reverse phenomena, in which basically it goes downwards and outwards, and inverse, which is upwards and inverse, and a perverse, where it is in all directions. These are the ones to be really careful about and note, because a Bell's phenomena, which is moderate or poor, can still have a good outcome. But in these cases, the cornea can get fired and you could be in trouble. Coming to synkinetic ptosis, Marcus-Gunn ptosis is something that most of us see and in our, in our training, and we know the beauty of how on moving the jaw, because of a synkinetic innervation, the eyelid goes up. Now I'll come back to this case later to point out the red flag, but let's go to the next thing. So basically there's an opening or a widening of the ptosis. The ptosis basically increases on movements of the jaw. And this is just something I put because often people don't know that you can actually grade Marcus-Gunn. And mild is when it elevates 2 millimeters above the ptotic lid or goes up to the limbus. Moderate is when you go up to a little bit of scleral show, and severe is when it elevates to 4 millimeters above and there is a significant amount of scleral show. Back to this boy, the red flag here is that basically he has a well-formed lid crease prior to the ptosis correction. Now in this case, on measuring it, his ptosis action was just 6 to 7 millimeters. But because of the well-formed lid crease, you often feel, though you know the muscle is dystrophic, that you think that the levator will do well even on a moderate to advanced levator resection. But this is a red flag because of the synkinetic. Often these patients do have a well-formed lid crease and they still have a dystrophic levator and need to be like a maximal levator resection to really get a good correction. Others will end up with a really, really poor undercorrection. Coming to this last patient. So here is a girl. So parents were very happy because they thought that while they had noticed something, they felt that most of the times I looked symmetrical. But then we found that she often dropped her lid, which led to meridional amblyopia because of a refractive error. So in synkinetic ptosis, it is important to notice the time and the amount that they are being able to hold the eyelid up, because otherwise it can lead to lazy eye or amblyopia. So this is her post correction with a sling. Now coming to Hering's law. Hering's law is basically when the eyes are, when there is a ptotic eyelid, and thank you Akshay for lending me these photos at the nth minute. But the basic principle is that when there is a ptotic eyelid and you lift the other eyelid, if you lift the ptotic eyelid and the normal eyelid drops, this is known as Hering's law. This occurs because there is a single simultaneous innervation occurring to both the levators at the same time. So when the eyelid is corrected, as is seen in this case, there is a drop and the patient often feels that something has been done while you have corrected the ptotic eyelid, something has been done and ptosis has worsened. And this Hering's law is extremely important and is a red flag and needs to be informed to the patient prior and shown, because the correction needs to be titrated accordingly. Finally, coming to Schirmer's and the cornea. Schirmer's is an extremely important test, especially in adults, because while in children, the cornea adapts quite easily, in adults, often it can lead to dryness and exposure. And finally, this is my last slide. And oh, sorry, I'm just going to play this. This is a patient, if you can see, he was a patient of mine who came with bilateral eyelid retraction and then started complaining of ptosis and was advised surgery. But if you see, on exertion, eventually the eyelid starts coming down. So always be careful before you plan a surgery. This was a patient who developed a myasthenia. So it is very important to test for, even when rule out neurological causes. And with that, I'll summarize that a red flag is nothing but knowing the variations in the presentation of ptosis. Documentation is a must, and patient counseling is probably the most important thing. With that last slide, I give it to you, Akshay, to take the next topic.